Are you sick and tired of the daily grind, waking up early to go to work, only to finish it in overtime and getting home super late? Are you sick and tired of the company politics and the constant pressure from your boss on your work performance? Are you also sick and tired of always having no time to eat, no time to rest, no time to travel? Well, if you're truly sick and tired, let's do something about it. Before I talk about what you can do, let's first start the video by examining what many people's life priorities are in terms of two things. The first one, how they are spending their money, and the second one, how they are spending their time. Here's a little background on our channel. My wife Fran and I are a financially free couple since 2020, and it is our desire to address the knowledge gap that we believe there is in this world that's stopping people from breaking out of the rat race and gunning for their financial freedom. We will appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe to join our YouTube family so that we can create more videos like this for you. Okay, let's talk about money first, in terms of spending habits. Now, different generations have different spending habits, especially when they started out in the workforce. So I want to focus on a particular type of spend, which is your luxury spend, your wants. Let's start with Generation X, which is my generation. I'm a young Gen X. They're in their early to mid 40s, all the way until their late 50s. So I understand how my generation thinks or spend in terms of luxuries during the time when we started working. For the Gen Xers, I would say that for most of us during our mid to late 20s, luxuries like going to the cafe regularly to go for specialty coffees or going to higher end restaurants or even traveling wasn't so prevalent. During then, what my generation spent a lot of money on are on designer labels like designer handbags, designer shoes, designer clothing. Well, I was working in Singapore then, and I noticed that a lot of my female friends and colleagues were buying LV bags, Prada bags, Ferragamo shoes, and at the point of time they couldn't afford Chanel or Hermes yet. Well, for the guys, in terms of designer clothing, we are spending on Giorgio Armani, Versace, and Hugo Boss. At that point of time, a lot of Gen Xers in terms of luxury spend is on cars. Well, in the late 90s and 2000s, COE in Singapore wasn't as expensive, so it's very common for Singaporeans then to change their cars every 5 years. I know that it's still very common now in Malaysia, but no longer in Singapore because it's just gotten that expensive. During that time, I would say face value was a very important thing. So having a more luxurious car, let's say a continental car like a BMW or a Merc, was a very big thing then. And that's how the Singapore dream was born in the 1990s, denoted by your 5 C's, your cash, credit card, car, condo, and country club. And as the Gen Xers move into their 30s, they started getting married and having family, and then they become the sandwich generation where they have to manage their kids and their aging parents as well, and that's where the money goes to, and the Singapore dream starts slipping away. Now the millennials, when they started working, it wasn't an easy time because it was the beginning of the great financial crisis that happened because of the subprime crisis in the US, meaning it was difficult for them to find jobs, let alone well-paying jobs. As you would imagine, it became more difficult for them to afford big-ticket luxuries such as cars and a bigger house. So they turned to things like specialty coffees like Starbucks and avocado toast, which are easier to afford at that level. It was also during that time when budget travel was popularized, where airline carriers such as AirAsia, Jetstar, Tiger Airways were opening up multiple daily flights to nearby locations within Southeast Asia, to other parts of Asia, and to even places like Australia and New Zealand. As you would imagine, traveling became a common thing because of budget travel for millennials and also for the Gen Xers as well, such that everybody has inflated their lifestyle undeniably and introduced travel expenses to their budget. The Gen Zs, those that are in their teens all the way to their late 20s, are a different breed from the millennials and the Gen Xers altogether. The Gen Zs who are currently working are no longer seduced by the designer brands. Instead, they are attracted to alternative brands that promote ESG, that are unique and different from everybody else. The Gen Zs are also very big on lifestyle. That's why brands like Lululemon, which promotes activewear, brands like F45, which does functional training instead of the traditional gym, or Evolve, which promotes MMA, such kind of activities are being popularized, especially by the Gen Zs. As it seems, especially in Singapore, the big ticket items like a car and a house may be pretty out of reach, especially for the Gen Z and some of the young millennials. Therefore, they indulge and splurge on smaller purchases, but they are stacked on purchases like all these brands, all these alternate brands that can actually impact their budget by a lot. So regardless of generation, when something new is introduced, let's say budget travel, all generations indulge in them, and therefore they have expanded their budget and their spend because of that. So what's important now is for you to prioritize, isn't it? You see, we cannot control what is introduced into the market. Even if you avoid going to the malls nowadays, you can find them online and it's just as seductive for you to spend your money. Even if you disregard material things and focus on experiences instead, but they do cost money, right? So it's important actually for us to pick and choose our battles. Therefore, if you want to gun for a big and audacious goal like financial freedom and fire your boss, you will want to know where your priorities lie. Earlier on, we talked about where and how you're spending your money. Now, I want to talk about how you're spending your time. I want to start by first asking you a few questions, especially to those of you who are holding a full-time job. Where are you spending your time after work? Do you track your time? And are you spending your personal time on doing something worthwhile that's adding value to yourself? So why am I asking these questions? Well, most of the time, see the irony here, most of the time, we are always emphasizing on money. Money is like the number one priority, isn't it? So here's the scary part. We are actually not running out of money. We are actually running out of time. We should not be exchanging time for money. We should actually be making money to buy time. Here's a little tip for you. During your personal time, before you start deciding about how you want to spend the next block of 2 to 3 hours, here are 2 questions that you might want to ask yourself before embarking on them. Now, when I'm talking about your personal time, I'm not referring to errands or chores. That goes without saying that you need time for those. These are 2 questions you want to ask yourself before committing the next 2 to 3 hours of your personal time. The first question is, does this activity add value to my life? The second question is, does this activity contribute towards my short-term or long-term goals? Case in point, first example, exercising. Does it add value to my life? Yes. The second question, does it help with my short long-term goal in terms of longevity and staying strong and fit? Yes. Here's the second example, spending 2 to 3 hours to scroll through social media regularly or even posting on them regularly that takes up your time. The first question, does it add value to my life? Well, actually it depends. If the content I'm consuming is something that I can learn and benefit from it, then yes, it's worth spending that 2-3 hours on. But if I'm mindlessly scrolling and looking at other people's posts that doesn't impact my life at all, then no. Second question, does this activity support me on my goals? Well, if you're consuming a video, for example, that's teaching you how to eat healthier, that teaches you about nutrition and diet, then yes. But if you're watching somebody eat for 2 to 3 hours without learning anything, then no. Time is a valuable resource that we should always utilize it wisely. Don't spend your time frivolously. That's why it's important for you to be always conscious about how you're spending your time and always make time your top priority. Here are 5 things you can do to get your priorities straightened out. Are you ready? Let's go! The first thing to do is to get real about your finances. Be honest. Some of you may be aware there's this Netflix show that features David Beckham, and there's this famous scene where David was questioning his wife Victoria when she was describing how she was growing up in a working class, and David Beckham asked Victoria to be honest because she was actually driven around by his dad who owns a Rolls Royce, but yet she calls herself working class. Now, my point is, if you are unable to be honest with your own personal finance, how you're spending, what you're spending on, and don't own up to it, how can you then be accountable for your financial future? Spending money is easy. Taking ownership over frivolous spending, over indulgence, is something that's difficult to do. And if you're able to be honest and get real about your personal finance by taking ownership, that's a great start. Second thing you can do is to stop comparing yourself with others, aka stop keeping up with the Joneses. How many endless stories have you heard around you, whether it's your friend, your neighbor, your colleague, your own family, that are buying bigger cars, buying bigger houses, traveling further, more exotic, flying business class? When does the competition end? You might tell yourself, I'm not influenced by their lifestyle, I'm not in competition with them. But when you do end up buying that bigger car or traveling to a further location, have you actually done your numbers and plugged in all the figures to know whether you can really afford it or not? Keeping up with the Joneses is a very real thing. Even though it's an American term, it applies to all countries. So be aware when you're spending your money and don't let that lifestyle inflation creep in. The third thing you can do is have an investing plan with proper numbers that can actually help you break out of the corporate rat race. Now, you may not have invested before, or you could be a newbie investor and you don't really know which are the best investment vehicles out there for you to choose. Yes, but there is no excuse for you not to build your numbers, put a little bit of compounding magic for you to estimate how long it will take you to break out the rat race. And if you're not sincere about building the numbers, then I would say your intention to be financially free is not strong at all. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Establish your starting step with at least a basic plan with numbers so that at least you show some intention about getting to your financial freedom goal. The fourth thing you can do is to set aside 1 hour every week to reflect back on your past activities. Self-reflection is a very important exercise for you to look back at your past activities, to examine them, to internalize them, to analyze them such that you are in a better position to take the next steps forward. You want to be examining your past activities and check whether they are aligned to your personal goals or not, such that your action taking moving forward can either be tweaked or changed. By looking back, you can then only move forward. The fifth thing you can do to get your priorities straightened out, well, it's not applicable to all of you. That is to pull in your partner to gun for common goal together. I call it double power. Double the brain juice, double the efforts, mixed together with the compounding effect. At the end, your results will be more than double. Play to each other's strengths and weaknesses and keep each other together and motivated towards your common goal, the higher chance you all will succeed. At the end of the day, your life priorities is entirely up to you. It's your choice, nobody else's. In terms of achieving financial freedom, I can share with you that a number of people have done it, and Fran and I have interviewed a few of them. Some of them are young in their early 30s, single and already done it. Some of them married with a kid, early 30s, done it. Some of them have retired for 10 years, whether they are married with kids or married without kids, and many more examples. Gunning for financial freedom is entirely your choice. If you don't want to gun for it, you can. If you want to gun for it, you can as well. Fran and I are passionate about helping people to break out the corporate rat race and to gun for their financial freedom, as well as help people improve their financial literacy. And that's why we are conducting free masterclasses a few times a month. Do join us on these masterclasses where we can go in detail about such topics and join our mailing list in the link below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this has given you value. Do hit the like button and subscribe to join our YouTube family, and see you in the next video.